Sporting Law brought to you from the team at Sprung. I'm your host, Lawrence. What happens when unstoppable fire meets immovable ice? The tennis world found out when John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg collided in what many call the greatest rivalry in sports history. They weren't just players, they were opposing forces on the same court. McEnroe was pure fire. Every swing of his racket carried his entire soul. His intensity and emotion created constant drama that captivated audiences worldwide. Then there was Borg, calm, composed, an unshakable glacier on the other side of the net. It was fire versus ice, passion versus precision. Two completely different philosophies battling point after point. These men became larger-than-life characters. McEnroe wasn't just a tennis player. He was a rock star with that curly mop of hair and fiery outbursts. Love him or hate him, you couldn't look away. Borg was the Iceman, a silent, almost mysterious figure with his cool headband and icy gaze. People idolized his laser-like focus. Their personalities transcended the sport. This wasn't simply two blokes playing tennis, this was an epic clash of identities. The fans were hooked. This rivalry turned tennis into an event, pushing the sport into the spotlight during the late 70s and early 80s. Suddenly, tennis wasn't just a sport, it was culture. Perhaps most fascinating, their rivalry wasn't just about winning or losing. They pushed each other to redefine what tennis could be. Neither would have been as legendary without the other. Their battles elevated the game itself, and their matches felt historic even as they unfolded. If one match defines the McEnroe-Borg rivalry, it's the 1980 Wimbledon final. Let's set the scene. Borg had already won 4 straight Wimbledon titles. He was the king of grass, seemingly untouchable. McEnroe was the young challenger, this fiery presence charging in to rewrite the script. Their clash represented tennis at its absolute peak. What makes this match stand out is that unforgettable 4th set tiebreak. McEnroe fought to stay alive, refusing to back down. Borg remained cool as ever, matching him shot for shot. The tiebreak stretched to an incredible 18-16. The tension on the court and in the stands was palpable, every point balanced on a knife's edge. Both men dug incredibly deep. It wasn't just about physical skill anymore. This was about mental toughness, psychological strength. They showed us what happens when two athletes refuse to crack, no matter how intense things get. It was genuinely inspiring to watch. Borg ultimately won the match, claiming his 5th title in a row and solidifying his reign as one of the all-time greats. But McEnroe, even in defeat, emerged a hero. His passion and fight captured the imagination of tennis fans everywhere. It wasn't just Borg's victory, it was about the rivalry itself and the story they were writing together on that court. Now to the 1981 US Open, a turning point straight from a sports drama. By then, Borg had been the dominant force, the icy monarch of tennis. McEnroe was the young rebel shaking the status quo. Their final match at Flushing Meadows marked a significant shift not just in their rivalry, but in tennis itself. This wasn't simply about McEnroe winning his first US Open title, it was about him dethroning Borg in a way that symbolized a changing of the guard. Borg seemed slightly off his usual unshakable rhythm, while McEnroe refused to yield. That victory was bigger than a win. It was McEnroe stepping into the spotlight as the new face of tennis. For Borg, it was the beginning of the end. Not long after, he shocked everyone by retiring at just 26 years old. What's incredible is how their paths after those matches shaped their legacies further. Borg, this larger-than-life figure, stepped away from the courts and retreated into a quiet, almost enigmatic existence. McEnroe kept going, kept fighting, and cemented himself as more than just a player. He became an ambassador for the sport, a voice, an icon. They ended up in completely different places, but their rivalry remains the thread that ties them together. What they did for tennis is felt even today. They brought the sport into a new era, made it something people couldn't stop discussing. For a whole generation of players and fans, Borg and McEnroe weren't just opponents, they were a blueprint, a reminder of how rivalries can elevate the game, spark fascination, and capture our hearts in a way that stats and numbers alone never could. Even now, when we watch contemporary tennis, we see echoes of what they started. Players pushing each other to new heights, rivalries defining eras. Federer and Nadal, Serena and Venus, they all owe something to the story of McEnroe and Borg. That fire versus ice magic, that's where their real legacy lives, not just in titles or records, but in how they made us feel, how they showed us what it means to compete, not just against your opponent, but against your own limits. That's a legacy that will outlive every stat sheet. And that's all for today's Sporting Lore. Thanks for coming along on this trip back through one of the greatest rivalries in sports history. Until next time, keep watching, keep loving the game, and maybe find a little bit of that fire or ice in yourselves too. I'm Lawrence, and please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Sporting Lore brought to you from the team at Sprung.